I can definitely say I didn't see this one coming. Who would have thought that the person that Isuka ended up saving in episode 1, which got him thrown into the slammer, would come back in such an important role? And honestly, there's a lot of possibilities with what they could do with how that connects with Alice's side and the interesting turmoil that it could cause or give him another ally in the making. Now, I do want to quickly mention if I sound less enthusiastic or I'm a bit more quiet or I just don't look as happy as I normally do in the reviews, it's nothing because of the episode. I'm not feeling that great, my throat's sore, so I'm just trying to not use too much energy and use up my voice so it remains to at least be talkable so I don't have to take a break from making videos or anything like that. With that out of the way, I do have to say this was a very exciting episode of Our Last Crusade. I mean, anyone who watched last week's episode probably assumed we were going to be in for some greatness, at least on the visual side. And without a doubt, they delivered. You have a guy who basically has a god complex who pretty much believes himself to be the second coming of Jesus if Jesus wanted to completely destroy the world. And it's interesting to see his powers go up against someone who can actually rival his abilities, because when you're throwing him up against a maid, it's really hard to grasp how powerful he is, because even though someone like Rin is capable in combat, she's nowhere close to someone like Alice or Isuka in terms of their combat abilities and the magic and the weaponry that they can use and how they can use it. So to throw someone like Isuka into the situation, which obviously you knew he would, I was actually thinking that what was going to happen was immediately Rin was going to realize that he's a pretty great guy and she'd switch her mentality, but rather she's pretty reluctant to accept this help, but kind of admits to the fact that unfortunately she has to accept this help, and the terms that they come up with that if he defeats him, they'll let him and his company pass through the bridge undetected. It's an interesting way to not just conveniently say everyone on the other side is now fond of Isuka. Alice, of course, is in love with Isuka, and Isuka is clearly in love with her, but they're very confused about their feelings. Someone like Rin shouldn't immediately switch over to saying, oh, Isuka's an amazing guy, but there's no reason why she shouldn't start admitting that he's a good person even if he's on the other side. Clearly they have different beliefs and ideas, but they do share a very similar aspect, which is their heart and how much they care for good people. So it's nice that he was able to go up against this opponent, not only just to help someone that clearly he knows Alice is very fond of, but also as a way to get him and his friends across the bridge unnoticed, because as you see at the end of the episode, their crests were starting to wear off. They would have had no ability to get across there undetected if they waited any sooner. So it's interesting how they served a very interesting plot device in this equation, while also making it feel like natural bonding in a very fluid way. I actually thought this was going to be the turning point for Rin, and she would just immediately love Isuka, be like, not obviously like in love with him, but maybe then again, this is anime, they could go that route. But it just felt like this was going to be an immediately switch, but instead she has a more reluctant approval of him, which I think is more in line with her character. The fight itself, I think, was pretty much what I expected, which isn't a bad thing. They didn't really throw anything that was all that shocking besides Isuka using his one sword to freeze himself in the fire blast, which I thought was really cool. I thought it was visually interesting, but also just I didn't see it coming. You knew he wasn't going to die in that attack, but it also wasn't certain how he was going to survive. I just kind of expected he was going to climb out of the rubble like Spider-Man, showing how strong he is. Instead, they did something really interesting and kind of explains why there's a pair of swords and things like that. But it was nice just seeing two powerful warriors clash and not really feel like, oh, you're worried if this guy ends up dead, because when Alice and Isuka clash, you don't want to see either one of them get hurt. But having him go up against someone who can actually rival his abilities, if not surpass his own, it gives you this feeling of like, it doesn't matter if he cuts his head off, because you're excited to see Isuka go full throttle without having to worry that he's going to hurt someone he cares about. Instead, this is just an evil scumbag and he wants to send him to the depths of hell. I was actually pretty worried based on how the pacing was going in this episode that Isuka was just going to defeat yet again another enemy, and I was going to feel like we've introduced two powerful people, how are we going to continue the show when seemingly the end bosses just keep getting defeated? But he actually had to retreat because there was just no way he could deal with it in that situation until he got more power or something like that. So it actually served a pretty interesting purpose to show how powerful he is, but also not give the endgame no substance or flavor. It kind of feels like we might meet him again one more time, they fight, he retreats, and then the actual final battle whenever the light novels kind of end or something like that. I thought this was a very fun episode full of visual spectacle. My favorite part of the visual production is clearly the embers and how they float in the air. There's so much fire happening, and I think generally with anime and fire scenes, they animate the flames well enough, but they don't animate the effects around the flames. So every time you're looking at these characters and the flames are pretty much in the foreground, even when they're in the background, you see little embers kind of smoking around as well as the smoke and the flames. I don't know why they went to such extremes to make the show look as good as it is, but you really can tell it's one of the best animated shows, at least when it comes to its fight scenes, that the fall 2020 season has to offer. I mean, there's just so much happening in the lightning attacks. I mean, there's this really cool blur effect that happens when like crazy magical powers are clashing with other abilities, and they really just go all out. And I've constantly complimented how no attack really feels like the same one we've seen before. And this episode definitely had some of the more visually unique, like the one time when Isuka's sword comes crashing down. It's kind of like a sneak attack. You see this almost like barrier that's kind of like threaded like webbing. It's really cool how they're able to use air attacks. So generally air attacks, you just get the kind of slicing motions in the air. Here you get so many interesting ways to show why if you had air magic, you could do some really interesting things and seemingly make yourself invincible if you have like a barrier around you that people can't see. It just feels like nothing convenient happened in this episode. It felt like there was reasons for things happening. Even the idea that someone like Isuka is able to see something no one else could, he's just heightened his senses to such a degree that he uses the abilities like the flames around him to be able to indicate what's going on. Most people don't have that luxury because they're gifted with the abilities, where Isuka had to work for it at such a young age. Like I mentioned last week in episode 8's review, last week kind of felt like what I wanted the show to be from episode 1, and I had to readjust my opinion because the remaining episodes up until that point were vastly different. Episode 9 is no exception. It just feels like it's a more serious tone. There's some goofy and cute moments for sure, but overall it's a lot more serious than what it's trying to tell, and I'd be interested to see where the final few episodes are going to go, especially considering I was a little concerned like why Nameless popped up for like a brief second and then just went away, and then we see it's this bitch, and I'm like, okay, well that makes total sense now why this happened. There's just so many different plot pieces happening all at once, but it doesn't feel like anything convenient is happening, and convenience is just such a normal thing for a show like this, where things magically happen, things just for no reason other than the author can't write in a good way for things to continue without it feeling like an ass pull. But here it feels like the way the battle ended and started and just the connections that are forming, it feels like there's a reason why these two can't just admit to their feelings, because they are on opposite sides and they believe in completely different things, but they do believe the other is a good person. There's a lot of really nice things happening, and while yes, it's not going to leave us off on a satisfying ending because the source material is ongoing, with the way the anime has been going, if they don't make a second season, there's enough here for me to be willing to check out the source material because it's just really engaging and there's a lot of possibilities with what they could do. To be honest, with the way the last couple of episodes went, you would have thought that this would have been a great episode 11 and 12 to wrap up this season because it's a decent enough stopping point to give you that cliffhanger like, oh, the person that we saved in episode 1 is just here. So I don't know if they're going to be able to do anything better than what we've seen for the final few. Like maybe there'll be another battle that we just don't see coming, or maybe it'll be more set up. I do think we're not going to see anything as crazy as what we just witnessed in the final few episodes, but then again, I could be mistaken. So I'm curious if they're going to be able to leave off on something that really grips people into wanting to check out the source material, or if they're just going to immediately confirm another season. Because a lot of the shows that the studio's been working on the past year have all been getting second seasons, so there is a decent chance, I would say, more than usual for a show like this. So hopefully get more, but it's really hard to say at this point. But yeah, it's weird to think that what would be in episode 11 and 12 were in episodes 8 and 9, and you still have 3 episodes left to go. It feels like there must be crazier things that we can end the season on, but I guess only time will tell. Overall, this was a very solid episode, one of the most fun episodes, and this is easily the best visually looking one if I'm being completely honest. I'm really interested to see where the final few will take us, but as always, let me know your thoughts and feelings and definitely your theories down below. Do you love it, do you hate it, whatever you're feeling. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, show your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be around here. So until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.